I want to tell you about a night I still remember clearly. I was sitting on the bathroom floor, not because something dramatic had happened, but because the coolness of the tiles felt grounding. I had my phone in my hand, scrolling through months of conversations. And when I finally stopped avoiding what was right in front of me, I noticed a pattern that changed something inside me. Every conversation had been started by me. I was always the one reaching out, breaking the silence, checking in, following up, offering warmth, trying again. There were dozens of conversations, and somehow almost every beginning carried my name. What I felt wasn't simply sadness, it was grief. Because underneath all that effort was a hope I hadn't fully admitted to myself. I believed that if I kept showing up, eventually they would show up too. If I loved them consistently enough, patiently enough, maybe one day something inside them would shift and they would finally reach for me first. That's the hope I want to talk about today. Because after experiencing this dynamic myself and listening to so many people describe the same pattern, I've realized that we're often asking the wrong question. We ask, what should I say so they initiate? Or, how should I behave so they finally come after me? Those questions make sense when you're hurting, but they're still centered around controlling the outcome. You're searching for the perfect move that will make an avoidant person respond differently. And the more you focus on that, the deeper you remain trapped in the same cycle. There is another question that is far more important, yet almost nobody asks it. What keeps me waiting? This is where things get deeper. Attachment researchers often talk about something called deactivating strategies. These are unconscious ways an avoidantly attached person pushes down their own need for connection so they can maintain emotional distance and protect themselves from vulnerability. And there's something important people often overlook. These reactions become stronger when the attachment system is activated. In other words, when someone gets emotionally close, the avoidant nervous system can experience that closeness as danger rather than comfort. It isn't necessarily a conscious decision, it's an automatic response. Many avoidant patterns develop from early experiences where expressing feelings, asking for comfort, or depending on someone didn't lead to consistent safety. A child learns that needing others can hurt, so they begin suppressing those needs. Eventually, that protective response can become the way they navigate adult relationships. So when you love an avoidant person with patience, consistency, and warmth, their system may not experience all of that as safety. Part of them may experience it as pressure. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Their nervous system was shaped long before they met you. Understanding that took me a long time because initially, their withdrawal felt like a judgment on the value of my love. But this is where the stages become important, because the real story isn't only about what the avoidant person does. It's also about what happens inside you at every stage, and where the actual turning point begins. The first stage is what I call the performance stage. This is where you start adjusting yourself around them. You become more careful with your words. You study their patterns. You learn about avoidant attachment. You watch videos, read books, and try to understand nervous system responses. You become increasingly patient because you want to create an environment where they feel safe enough to come closer. And there is genuine love in that effort. But there's a problem. When one person increases their pursuit of connection, the other person may increase their need for distance. That distance then creates even more anxiety in the person seeking connection, which causes them to reach even harder. This creates a cycle where each person's coping mechanism activates the others. Neither person necessarily intends to create it, but the more you pursue, even with good intentions, the more their nervous system may interpret intimacy as something demanding, something they have to manage or escape from. You are not responsible for creating their avoidance.
Please understand that.
But your constant pursuit can unintentionally keep the same relational conditions alive. Then comes stage 2, the depletion stage. This is when trying to make the relationship work begins costing you more than you realize. You feel exhausted in a way that sleep can't fix. You become so focused on understanding their moods, silences, reactions, and patterns that you slowly lose touch with your own. You know how to read them, but you no longer know how to read yourself. When these avoidant patterns remain unexamined, emotional intimacy can become limited, and the relationship may feel unstable. The avoidant partner can begin feeling trapped or lonely, while you may start wondering whether something is wrong with you. And this is where many people make the same mistake. They either push harder, they demand answers, initiate the difficult conversation again, explain their needs more forcefully, hoping this time they'll finally be understood. And the avoidant person pulls even farther away. Or they shut down completely. They become silent, but not from genuine self-respect. They're simply exhausted and no longer know what else to do. Both reactions are understandable, but neither one addresses what is actually becoming available to you in this moment: clarity. And that brings us to stage 3, the reclamation stage. I want to be careful with this idea because choose yourself is often presented as though it's a simple decision that instantly fixes everything. It isn't. Choosing yourself while you're still deeply in love with someone who repeatedly pulls away isn't something you decide once and never struggle with again.
It's a process of slowly returning to yourself, one choice at a time. Choosing yourself isn't a single decision you make and then magically never struggle with again. It's something you return to repeatedly. Some days it feels peaceful, other days it takes everything in you to do it. But what does reclamation actually look like? It means beginning to give your own life the same attention you've been giving theirs. Instead of constantly studying their behavior, you start becoming curious about your own. You notice your reactions, your fears, your patterns, without immediately blaming yourself for having them. And eventually you begin asking yourself a difficult but incredibly revealing question.
Why does someone else's distance feel more familiar to me than genuine closeness? Don't rush past that question. Sit with it. An avoidantly attached person may develop emotional distancing because somewhere early in life, their nervous system learned that depending on people could result in rejection, criticism, disappointment, or instability. So they learn to survive by becoming self-reliant. Need less, ask for less, handle everything alone. These responses aren't usually calculated decisions. They happen automatically. But the person who becomes deeply attached to an avoidant partner can have their own version of an old wound. It may not look like emotional deactivation. Instead, it can look like becoming accustomed to earning love. Maybe affection had to be deserved when you were younger. Maybe you learned that being good, useful, successful, agreeable, or emotionally convenient was the way to receive love. And when affection was inconsistent, you learned to work harder for it. So when an avoidant person gives you warmth one moment and distance the next, something inside you may recognize the pattern. It doesn't necessarily feel unfamiliar. It can feel like home. And I want you to understand something important. That doesn't mean there is something wrong with you. It means there may be an old wound underneath the attraction, and that wound deserves compassion, not shame. You've spent so much time trying to understand why they behave the way they do. Now it's time to offer yourself that same level of understanding. And this brings us to the turning point, the part that surprises people most. There is a pattern researchers have observed where avoidantly attached people can idealize former partners or become more aware of their feelings after someone creates real distance. When the person is no longer emotionally demanding closeness, the perceived threat decreases.
And when that threat decreases, feelings that were previously pushed away can become easier to access. That's why an avoidant person may suddenly think about you more once you stop constantly reaching for them. Let that sink in. Sometimes they can feel their longing most clearly when they no longer have to defend themselves against closeness. But I need to make something very clear. I'm not telling you to disappear as a technique to make them chase you. I'm not suggesting you manufacture silence, pretend not to care, or use distance as a psychological trick. Because if you're doing that just to trigger a reaction from them, you're still performing. You're still organizing your entire emotional life around what they might do next. And somewhere inside, you know the difference. What I'm talking about is something much deeper.
An avoidant nervous system generally doesn't transform because someone finally discovers the perfect text message. Change requires repeated experiences that allow intimacy to feel less threatening and more predictable. That means learning how to create space without abandoning the relationship, learning how to approach without chasing, learning how to offer warmth without turning that warmth into pressure. There is a way to be present without pursuing. You can be caring without becoming desperate, available without sitting around waiting, connected without constantly trying to prove your worth. And the biggest difference isn't always the behavior itself. It's the place inside you that the behavior is coming from. Are you reaching out because you genuinely want to connect, or because you're terrified that if you don't, they'll disappear? Are you giving them space because you respect their process, or because you're hoping that your silence will finally make them chase you? Those may look identical from the outside, but internally, they are completely different experiences. There's another piece of this that I think deserves attention. Long-term stress can affect how easily people experience feelings associated with bonding, safety, and connection. When someone's nervous system has spent years operating from a state of emotional protection, closeness itself can feel muted, unfamiliar, or even uncomfortable. And that means the conditions that allow an avoidant person to genuinely move toward you have far less to do with how constantly available you make yourself. Your endless availability cannot force someone to feel safe. And your constant pursuit cannot create the emotional capacity they haven't yet learned to access. What matters most is whether they can experience closeness without their internal alarm system immediately interpreting it as pressure. You can't create that sense of safety for them, and you can't force their nervous system to feel differently. But you can stop adding pressure to a dynamic that is already fragile. That brings us to stage 4, what I call the arrival. And arrival may not look as dramatic as you once imagined it would. Sometimes an avoidant person moving toward you begins with something incredibly small, a message that actually has emotional substance, a vulnerable admission, a question they could have avoided, a moment when they choose to move closer instead of automatically pulling away. You'll recognize the difference because it won't feel like another breadcrumb. It will feel intentional. It will feel like they are moving toward you while still working through their fear, rather than using fear as a reason to avoid the relationship altogether. This is closely connected to what researchers describe as earned, secure attachment, the process of developing healthier attachment patterns through repeated, intentional experiences of trust and emotional safety. When an avoidantly attached person genuinely moves through that process, the change doesn't stay limited to one relationship. They can begin developing healthier behaviors across different parts of their life. They may communicate when something is bothering them instead of disappearing. They may ask what you mean instead of assuming the worst. They may express what they're actually feeling without immediately preparing themselves for rejection or punishment. That kind of transformation is absolutely possible. But here's the part you need to remember. You cannot love someone into becoming secure. They have to participate in their own healing. No amount of patience can make that decision for them. No amount of understanding, softness, reassurance, or perfectly calibrated behavior can create emotional growth on their behalf. You can make the environment safer, but you cannot walk their inner journey for them. And I want you to hear this next part gently, because I know it can hurt. If an avoidant person hasn't been initiating with you, that doesn't automatically mean you weren't enough. It doesn't mean you loved incorrectly. It doesn't mean you sent the wrong message, cared too much, cared too little, or somehow failed to become the person they needed. Someone can genuinely care about you and still struggle profoundly with emotional closeness. But that struggle belongs to them. It is their territory to understand, confront, and work through. Your responsibility isn't to discover the perfect formula that finally makes them choose you. Your responsibility is to build a life that doesn't depend on them choosing you. And I don't mean that as some cold strategy where you suddenly become distant so they panic and come running back. I mean it for real. It means honestly looking at your life and asking yourself what kind of love you want, what kind of relationship you need, what kind of consistency, communication, affection, and emotional presence actually makes you feel secure. Then you have to ask the harder question. Is what this person is currently offering anywhere close to that? Because someone can offer you warmth sometimes and still be incapable of offering you the relationship you need. I've learned something through sitting with this pattern, both personally and through listening to others who've lived through it. The moment you stop performing for an avoidant person, not because you're angry, not because you're trying to punish them, and not because you're hoping they'll suddenly chase you, but because you've decided your emotional well-being is no longer something you're willing to trade for attention, something changes. Maybe it changes them, maybe it doesn't, but it changes you. And that change in you is important because it creates the only kind of space where their own feelings can emerge without you constantly trying to pull them to the surface. You cannot chase someone into choosing you. Deep down, you already know that. You may just not have been ready to fully accept it. But there's another truth beneath that one. You cannot wait your way into being chosen either. When waiting comes from fear, it isn't really patience. It's holding your breath and hoping someone else eventually gives you permission to exhale. It's building your days around their next message. It's checking your phone. It's rereading old conversations. It's returning to that emotional bathroom floor, searching through the past for proof that if you had just loved a little better, maybe the ending would have been different. But your love was never the problem. Your love was enough. It always was. The question now isn't whether you were worthy of being loved. The question is whether you're finally ready to turn some of that love back toward yourself.